Splash all about Raila. Raila out to unite his support base with cost tour. That is what is on the front page of the Bold paper today. Turn-around plan. ODM leader begins his visit of coast counties, a traditional base that has been eroded by government and locals who seek to have a voice. However, with the recent forays of Western Kenya bearing fruit, this visit is high of significance. And you have the story on page 10. He says, quote unquote here, we want to give an opportunity to young people to register as voters. This recruitment drive will culminate in the grassroots party elections in April. This is what the splash is all about here. Also, rollout of new health scheme awaits public input. Public participation on the new health scheme is set to begin after Court of Appeal lifted orders that suspend an implementation of the Social Health Insurance Act 2023. You have a story on page 6 of the Standard today. The difference between NHIF and SHIF is here. SHIF card. You need to get used to that particular new transition from NHIF to SHIF, even me as an anchor. A card to cover all health center and dispensary costs in addition to high-level hospitals, unlike NHIF that covers services at level 4, 5, and 6. SHIF covers all Kenyans, the employed, unemployed, all young, rich, poor. SHIF is anchored on prevention of diseases. And you can get all the gritty details of this on page 6 of the Standard today, where you have a special report. And of course, also, we're exceedingly highly favored today to have Dr. Nyikal with us as well, who will also try and debunk all this for us so that we can be able to decipher this and understand as well what is inside here. Jaramogi's Lion Party pale shadow of 1992 giant. Age 32, the Lion Party prides itself as the second oldest in the country after Kanu, but with a sharp dwindling national presence and influence, save for its Bungoma County turf, where its current party boss Moses Wetangula hails from. You have a story on page 8, and of course everyone was looking and hacking back 30 years since his demise there, and just looking at the legacy of Jaramogi Odinga. Now KQ is seeking to hire yet another consultant. Kenya Airways is set to enlist the services of yet another consultant with a company that will be selected this time, expected to help the carrier secure an investor that will then inject capital to enable it turn around its fortunes. You have a story on page 19 of the Standard this morning. Let's see what the teaser has for us this morning here. Gachagua blames hidden hand for Mount Kenya troubles. This story continues on page 4 of the Standard this morning. Palestinians cut off from loved ones. The story is on page 21. And Pharaohs to miss Salah in crunch time. You have a story on page 32 of the Standard this morning. This is how it looks. Make sure you grab a copy for yourself. Also, you have Health and Science Pullard magazine coming in handy for you inside the Standard today. It's a miracle. I got access to treatment. It's a miracle. Find out all about that miracle inside the Health and Science Pullard magazine inside the Standard. The Daily Nation up next. Which way, Azimio? That is the abiding question. National Coalition Executive Council, NCEC, has written to all constituent parties. It's all about housekeeping. Azimio la Umoja One Kenya has called a crucial meeting this Thursday that is expected to determine the future of the coalition and its membership amid internal wrangles over the Boma's National Dialogue Report and the CAM's presidential flag bearer in the 2027 State House contest. This story is well covered for you on page 4 of the Daily Nation. AFCON Giants struggle. And you have the story on page 2, page 3 and 36. Before this year's Africa Cup of Nations kicked off just over a week ago, Senegal, Morocco, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, Algeria, Egypt, Tunisia, Cameroon, Ghana, and even Zambia were some of the teams considered favorites to be crowned champions on February the 11th. But as each day passes, the picture is becoming clearer that some of the so-called contenders could as well find themselves going home early in a competition filled with surprises. And you have the bright minnows, also big names rattled here, listed for you. Cape Verde, Namibia, Angola, Equatorial Guinea. And the big names that have been rattled, we have Egypt, Cameroon, Tunisia, Ghana, and Algeria soon. They could be going home. And this is what is all covered That is all covered inside the Daily Nation as well. Ministry moves to effect SHIF payslip cuts this month. The Ministry of Health is working round the clock to have regulations that will enable implementation of the Social Health Insurance Act 2023 in place this week. Sources indicated the goal is to have deductions effected starting this month. We're just some few days shy from that. We'll see if that will actually really happen. And that story is on page 2 of the Daily Nation. Strategy is how to boost economy. Workers' advice for President Kotu has offered a 5-point strategy to help get Kenya out of the current economic hole amid the soaring cost of living and heavy tax burden. That is what we have on page 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. Illegal fees. Ruto warns school heads. President says state has released cash. And also death toll climbs to 25,000 in Gaza. Israel has intensified attacks in territory. You have a story on page 18 of the Daily Nation this morning. Let's see what we have on the front page of the Star. Why Azimio is on the brink of falling apart. This is a splash. Mistrust. Karua, Eugene among principals who skipped Raila's father's memorial in Kisumu. Bigwigs retreat to build their own parties in preparation for 2027 presidential contest. You have a story on page 4 and 5 of the Star this morning. And how did it work here? I will work with ODM governors despite opposition. Ruto tells critics, you can see him here, let there be water. President Ruto during the commissioning of the Malaba water supply and sanitation project in Malakisi, Busia County, is with governors Kenneth Lusaka and Paul Otoma and Water Cabinet's Secretary Zakaria Njeru. You have a story inside the Star this morning. Sakaja praises cashless payment as City Hall records revenue surge. Also joy for farmers and sugar factory workers as states ready to pay 7 billion shillings arrears. And KRA and Interior Ministry staffers face disciplinary action over alcohol gifts. You have a story on page 7 of the Star. And phone damaged. Uproar after Star journalist Odinga wounded in attack at Siaya MP's event there. That is Elisha Odhiambo there. You can follow the story on page 3 of the Star, where we have one of the journalists who was attacked. Let's buckle down to some business. Half of banks lean on CBK liquidity support. This is what IMF is saying. Half of banks are leaning on CBK liquidity support, according to IMF. 20 commercial banks access discounts window by September. Disclosures highlight risk from falling bond prices. Half of Kenyan banks were accessing liquidity support from the Central Bank of Kenya by the end of September last year, reflecting difficulties in selling their bond holdings for cash due to depressed prices in the secondary market. Disclosure made by the International Monetary Fund in a country report on Kenya shows 20 of the country's 39 licensed banks were accessing the CBK's discount window, a facility that supports banks that come under liquidity pressure arising from no fault of their own. You can follow the story on page 2 of the Business Daily today. Holders of government debt also are here. We have banks holding 2.31 trillion shillings worth of government debt, accounting for 45.9% of states' domestic public debt. And they're all documented here, illustrated for you. You can grab a copy for that. Treasury eyes strategic investor for Kenya Airways by June. Kenya Airways is likely to close a deal with a strategic investor by June, even as the government continues to explore the option of privatizing the national carrier. The new investor will be expected to pump cash into the loss-making airline. Disclosures by the Treasury to the International Monetary Fund, with the government keen to win it off a frequent bailouts. You can follow the story inside the Business Daily. And it says here the government directed KQ to onboard a consultant to support the onboarding of an equity investor who can inject capital into the business. The procurement of the consultant is in the final stage and should be completed by the end of December 2023, with the aim of closing the deal by the end of June 2024. That is according to what IMF told the Treasury. You can follow the story on page 2 of the Business Daily. Why weak shilling failed to lift Kenya's export? Kenya's export last year upset expectations by failing against what was a more than 1/5 depreciation of a shilling against major world currencies, including the US dollar, the euro, and the British pound. You can follow the story inside the Business Daily this morning. State starts paying 6.9 billion shillings owed by sugar millers. The government has started the process of paying 6.94 billion shillings owed to farmers and staff by 4 public sugar millers: Moroni Sugar Company, Zoya Sugar Company, South Nyanza Sugar Company, and Chemelil Sugar Company ahead of releasing. Only 8 counties enjoy quality telco services. Only 8 of Kenya's 47 counties, on average, enjoy the industry-set quality of services from local telcos, Safaricom, Airtel, and Telkom Kenya, pointing to the underlying gaps that exist in the country's network coverage. And you saw also from the Communications Authority giving a warning to some of its telcos to up the ante as far as making sure they give quality service to wananchi. You can follow the story on page 13 of the Business Daily this morning. We cross borders now to Uganda. And right, I want to see if this is actually the right one I should be giving you. This is not it exactly. I'll give you the right one. What Samia's visit to Vatican means. President Samia Suluhu Hassan forthcoming state visit to the Vatican is expected to strengthen the provision of social services by the Catholic Church, especially in education and health. You have a story on page 2 of The Citizen this morning. And government committed to maintaining peace, unity ahead of elections. And that story also continues inside The Citizen. Africa in debt spiral as restructuring drags on. Also, that is tucked away inside today's Citizen. Tanzania Canadian farms partner in search for rare metal. Also, that inside The Citizen. Friends again? Despite apparent thawing of relations between Kenya and Uganda, there's sticking points in the fuel import talks. Kampala wants a license for UNOC, but Nairobi says the Ugandan marketer should embrace competition from Kenyan companies. And there are cases in the courts. And you know the story right now. President Ruto actually met President Yoweri Museveni on the sidelines of the non-aligned movements conference that was happening, or summit that was happening in Uganda last week. And this is the latest development there at the IGAD summit on Sudan. Actually, this was an IGAD, the crisis in Entebbe. So this is where they had their talks there on the sidelines regarding the latest development that we've been seeing, that spark between Kenya and Uganda, especially on the oil import that Uganda also has moved to court to contend that. You can follow the story on page 5, saying they were not sufficiently consulted as far as the sum of the metrics are concerned. And you can read all about it inside the East African. All right, let's see what we have on the front page of the China Daily. China's streamlined visa rules hailed in US. Convenience, flexibility aim to spark new boom in exchanges. This is what we have on the front page of the China Daily. And we have protests in Germany. I need to wake up my tongue this morning. Participants, we can be sitting here walking with a banner or banners, or a banner that reads "Stop the AfD," a reference to the Alternative for Germany party in Erfurt, Germany on Saturday during a nationwide demonstrations against right-wing extremism. The large crowds were the latest in a series of demonstrations that have been gaining momentum in recent days. You have a story on page 7 of the China Daily. Winter tourism gets Olympic boost from legacy of 2022 games. All that is inside the latest copy of the China Daily. I will run you by the editorial cartoons and also other international publications, looking at the Economist, looking at the Newsweek as well, and the Time magazine much later in the course of the program. I just want to unveil the panelists that we do have this morning. I mentioned them. Now is the time to create first time with them. We have with us Dr. James Jikal, who is Member of Parliament, Seme. Also, he is member of the delegation in the Health Committee in the National Assembly. He will decipher for us, especially when it comes to SHIF, what does it really portend Will we also be deducted as the employees the 2.75% this month, as the ministry is really working hard to make sure all the proper structures are in place in that regard. Also, we have Farah Malim, Member of Parliament, Dadaab. He'll also put into perspective what is happening within Azimio and generally the politics of the country, looking at the Mount Kenya area also. When he also hack back into history, is a good institutional memory for us today. He has a memory bank about Jaramogi's Lion Party, pelling shadow of a 1992 giant. He will tell us about the intrigues, the 30, of course, years we were hacking back since the demise of Jaramogi Odinga, and how he has been also a very critical pillar in the politics and shaping the political tone and tenor of this country. Danson Mugatano, fresh from Tana River, he will also give us an update on what he has been doing on the ground as well. But let me just hear for their voices this morning, beginning with Dr. James Nyikal. Good to see you.
Morning.
Good to see you. Good morning.
Thank you. Thank
right,
you
so you've been hard at work as well with the ODM going round about the country, making recruitments. The party elections are also coming up very soon. Yeah, you can actually prime us on what has been happening so far. Good to see you. Good morning.
Morning.
And how are the people of Seme?
People of Seme are fine. I was there yesterday and over the weekend, and we are doing fine. The ODM election preparations are going on, starting with the recruitment of membership. I think that's the main thing. So basically, we're just mobilizing to recruit new members so that when the time comes for election, we are ready so that we can revamp our structures. Basically, that is it. There isn't any big politics about it. Straightforward mobilization for recruitment of members. There are a lot of young people who have become of age. Some have acquired IDs, and we need to get into that and see how many can join our party. Yeah, basically, that's what's going on. And it has started, as you noted, our party leader is moving to the coast. I think there's a program, he'll go all over the country doing that. Yes.
All right. Farah Malim, good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning to you. How are you?
Very well, thank you. All right.
Yeah, it's interesting that race is beginning early.
I can tell you, everyone now is making sure they are keeping their house in order.
Lining up.
UDA.
Lining up. Yeah.
So you can tell us, because I wanted to hear a bit of also Jaramogi Odinga last week.
Well, Jaramogi, I was, the last time I was there was when he was being interred there in 1994.
Yeah.
I was at the Kango myself, in Bondo, where his body was interred there.
You are the funeral.
I was in the party, and I was a member of party,
Yes.
a member of parliament on Fort Kenya. And I had the good fortune and the opportunity to interact with Jaramogi a lot. And he was a great man, there's no doubt about that. Very, very, very sober, very wise, and somebody you could easily relate to. And he referred to me as my son always. I think the only person when we get into the meetings, he would say, my son, Farah Malim. And he was a powerful fatherly figure. I just wish we have that kind of leadership that used to be there those days. People who really were not going for the short-term, quick gratification of anything, but who had a depth in there and who you would engage. You see, the politics of today is one of scolding at anything you feel is there. You scold your opponents into submission. You don't talk to them and convince them and softly. But those days we had him. We had some very brilliant fatherly figures who had a lot of good ideas. Jaramogi was there. Unfortunately, around that time when we got into the 7th Parliament, Matiba was not in his element because he already had a stroke. So he wasn't that 100%. But Jaramogi, Kibaki, I had the luck of sitting with the likes of Sagini, Lawrence Sagini, Dennis Akumu, Onyonka, Zachary Onyonka, the late Zachary Onyonka, Nyechai, who was also an institution, a kind of a reference for public service management. I mean, he's been there from a DA all the way to the head of civil service. Michuki was there, who had served some stints in those early days in the colonial government as a DO, and who had both brilliant, good history at the same time, was also part of that colonial subjugation and oppression. It was called Kimendero, the crusher. People used to say that he used to take the Mau Mau fighters and drop them from helicopters there. So basically, I mean, there were all that. But one thing they all had in common is intense loyalty to their own country, and at the same time, a history and the ability to not view politics within that very limited view that we do now. So I really miss those days. I mean, I was there too as a young man, actually one of the youngest in Parliament at that time. Yeah. I think there's only one guy who was younger than me, this guy who was from Meru. And that's it. You could literally, and then there was a powerful camaraderie. I mean, on the floor of the House, you would see a lot of fighting between the opposition and the government. But the moment you come out of the chambers, and people are friends, literally, you sit together and we share ideas and we talk, and somehow there was always an effort to bring the nation together. We were there, not as enemies, but as friends who were grappling and dwelling over which are the best ideas to run this country for posterity, and it was a good thing. I don't think we will ever have a parliament as good as that one and as rich as that one. And I think it was good. It was good, very good. We had from the other side of Kanu, we had the likes of course, Onyonka Zachary and Nyechai were on the other side initially. We had the late Dr. Bonaya Godana. Both age and intellectual, brilliance was also a massive thing. And we had also in the opposition all those firebrands of opposition, Mukhisaki Tui, Henry Obocha, Anyang Nyongo, Orengo, myself, Professor Rashid Mzee, mention it, Paul Mwite, of course, Kreitu Murungi, who were basically out there with rearing, literally trying to, and it was good. It was a very good parliament, I can tell you, and a good time. We lost him too early, too fast, because he died in January of '94. He had been buried there for 1 year, because the elections were held in December of '92. So we're there in '93. And an honest person, very honest person. What really strikes everybody is the fact that he took some money from Kamlesh Patni for the Kisii elections. And he was very, very upfront about it. He says, this young man came to us and offered us support, and he was a good man. He did not know the background.
He was a bit naive.
Well, he didn't. Basically, he didn't know the guy. He's honest. Honesty is everything, an old man, very, very honest. And I mean, and that was it. And then he was also the chair of the Public Accounts Committee. Oh, let me not forget George Captain. What's his name? Wamalwa Kijana. In Fort Kenya, we had, and it was the only party that was represented in the 8 regions of this country. the 8 regions of this country. No any other party had that kind of a support. So I mean, we were there, and we would sit in there and literally debate on everything, as a parliament, as a group, as a PG, as the Fort Kenya PG, and I can tell you, a lot of the people who later on rose to prominence were very menials those days, very, very small out there. Raila Odinga was just the deputy director of elections. You know what I mean? nothing beyond that. And it was an industry of ideas, I can tell you. Very powerful industry of ideas. And we enjoyed every bit of it. And it was a nation, like I tell you, it represented all the 4 corners of this country, all the regions of this country, Fort Kenya, the Lion Party. And,
Indeed.
I think when I write my political history, a lot will be done.
You began, by the way, you should.
And one of the things that really reminds me of the, moments that are so treasured is when he went to the Garissa. You remember those days, there used to be for opposition zone and Kanu zone. Garissa was supposed to be a Kanu zone. So there were hooligans who were sent to us to what do you call that? At that time, I was campaigning myself with a small plane to a number of places in the constituency. And the constituency was very expansive. It's what you call like Dera today and the DAP put together. And so Jaramogi went to Garissa. My dad, who is apolitical, basically has decided my son is not around and this old man is coming. Then he took his own Land Cruiser and drove him. You know what I mean? He took his Land Cruiser and drove him. And then there were stones that were hurled. And the most, emotional thing about that is that some people were shielded the Jaramogi. And the stones that were supposed to hit Jaramogi, because they were coming from all directions. There were people who were taking all that on their backs and, everywhere. And blooded some of them. And that's it. The old man went there, he gave his rally. Half of the town was in his support and said, no, we're going to allow him to tell us everything he wants to tell. And for a very long time, got a lot of votes in my constituency, in what was Lagdera at that time. I remember a lady, an old lady, was told, who do you want to vote for? She voted for literally everybody. But when it came to the president, she could not remember the name, Odinga. And then she shouted, and most of those agents who were there were Kanu, so they bullied her and said, Moi. And she said, no. And then she started roaring like a lion. She said, the one. And the mother roared like a lion to say, that is the one I'm voting for, which was a symbol, of course.
The Lion Party.
The Lion Party. The Lion Party. She's now deceased. I mean, and I've had that relationship with her throughout until she rested. So we had a good time that time, I can assure you.
Right.
I just hope that we now have a nation of contestation of ideas instead of emotions and
ethnicity.
Ethnicity. And
fantastic.
Let's
cross over to Tana River and hear from also Dalson Mugatana, because I saw also over the weekend you attending the burial of Mzee Jilo as well. You can tell us more about Mzee Jilo, what's happening there, and I think also a bit of a SHIF was in that particular forum on social health. You can tell us more about that.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Dibal. First of all, I want to say that our county has been experiencing like new types of deaths, which were not with us earlier on. People have started getting cancer, things like heart problems and whatever. And I believe it's because of the change of eating habits. Yes, and lifestyle. Because many years ago when we were young, for breakfast we would have black tea with boiled bananas, And that's it. Nowadays, people have bread, they have, Blue Band to eat, they have tea, which they add sugar. And for us, in those days, when you say tea, actually what comes to mind is black tea, not tea with milk. And then sugar was not always available, you know. But then nowadays, the kind of deaths we are getting are very, so...
So we can speak to also
we
the
discussed
pictures. This picture, you can tell us more what's happening as we continue even.
Okay.
Because we have you there. For a bit I thought you were the choir master there, but I realize you're not the choir master.
No. So we have the chief. This social health insurance fund, the new one, would be a big game changer for us. So I took my time to explain to our people that now that the orders had been lifted, it is time that Tana River embraces this new fund because it will help us in terms of sorting out some of these chronic diseases that are part and parcel of us. And I took my time to explain that we used to pay, a lot of money. A person earning 20,000 would pay something like 750. Now the new rates, proposed rates, will be 500. And then the person who was earning 20,000 was not paying very different from the person earning 1 million. Because people who are earning 1 million, they were paying 1,700 shillings per month in the old NHIF. Now, with this new one, you pay 27,500, which means there is proportionality, because the proportionality here is coming at every person to pay 2.75% of gross salary. So we think that this fund is going to help people, because our people there, people become so poor. You have some cows, you sell them, you have land, you sell, you have a house, you sell. You're trying to go to sustain the dialysis. And the dialysis, continues until you can't afford and you still, lose your life. But with this new arrangement, we believe that something is going to happen down there in the villages. And I have actually started a very serious campaign to try and explain to our people. Some have asked the question, what about us who are not in formal employment? The answer is that for those who are not in formal employment, there will be those community health promoters who will be moving around and doing assessment. Every household must pay at least a minimum of 300 shillings. And that is very much less compared to all these WhatsApp groups, all these harambes that we must pay when some of our members of the family and friends get sick. So we are praying that the processes now will be smooth. But the caution I wanted to put to the Minister for Health, the Cabinet Secretary for Health, is that please let us have those proposed regulations come to the delegated legislation committees of both the National Assembly and the Senate. In fact, I'm the Vice Chairman of the Delegated Legislation Committee in the Senate. And you have two ways of doing it. You can publish the delegated legislation and then come back to for the Senate to accept or dismiss the whole thing, or you can come earlier and then we consult first. So my appeal to the Minister is that she comes earlier with the proposed draft, and we shall work on it. And we also hope that she will do public participation, because a lot of the delegated legislation that we reject, that comes from the cabinet secretaries, we reject them because they don't do sufficient public participation. So we hope Nakumicha will go around, call the affected stakeholders. They will do public participation. They will come for discussions with the committees, the relevant committee, at the National Assembly and at the Senate, so that by the time they are putting these regulations, they are gazetting these regulations, we will have a smooth application of these laws. And we are looking forward to a new generation of healthcare in our country. We really want to see this happening, because in our villages, it is too much. You are in this harambe, you are in this harambe, you are in this harambe, and it never comes to an end. So we hope that the shift will be a game changer this year. The rest of these steps that are remaining should not be difficult if she follows what Parliament says, because the Statutory Instruments Act, Section 5, demands that public participation be done. So I hope she follows the procedure.
Thank you.
And then we'll do it.
All right, we'll get into the meat of it much later. But for now, let's just also put tails on the president in Busia, where he was. We follow up what was happening there. If we may just continue with the auto cue. President William Ruto has read the Riot Act to school heads who overburden parents with unscrupulous levies with the excuse of non-disbursement of capitation monies. Speaking in Teso North during an interdenominational prayer service, the head of state assured that the government has already released 62 billion shillings, insisting that parents should not be charged. Leaders who accompanied the president urging him to resolve the perennial congestion at the border and the struggling cotton and rice sub-sector. As Alan Channel reports, the Malakisi water treatment plant has been officially commissioned and will serve more than 80,000 households.
Barely a week after the opposition Azimio toured its perceived stronghold of Busia, and the Kenya Kwanza team under President William Ruto attending an interdenominational prayer service in Teso South and commissioned a water project in Teso North. The president going straight for school heads and read the Riot Act over unscrupulous levies shouldered by parents, assuring that his government has already disbursed 62 billion shillings and intending to employ 20,000 teachers.
Kuna viongozi wengine wa haya mashule wanaenda kule wanamwambia mzazi ati pesa ya serikali haijafika, wewe lipa. Sasa msikie kutoka kwangu, hawa watu watawachana na hiyo tabia mbaya ya kuuliza wazazi walipe pesa na ilihali serikali imetoa pesa.
Some schools have been accused of belaboring parents with hidden charges like compulsory motivation fees, and the head of state's assurance could save them. Given the border towns of Malaba and Busia have great economic potential but have witnessed slow growth, the leaders implored the president to revive it by revisiting his pre-election economic charter with the county. The head of state committing to capitalize on the dry port at the border and also streamline rice and cotton farming.
Tuna msongamano mkubwa sana ya magari. Utusaidie kwa dual-link kutoka Kandui mpaka Malaba.
Zamani zile hapa Busia walikuwa wanalima pamba sana. Malaba, Malakisi, Mulwanda na zingine. We should strive to upscale the revival of these cash crops ili tusaidie wananchi.
Taongeza pesa kidogo katika supplementary budget, wewe Mary Emasa umesikia, ndio tuweze kupanua ile tripod, ndio hii msongamano ya magari iende chini na vijana wengi wapate ajira pale.
The leaders further hitting out at the opposition Azimio, accusing it of intolerance following last week's verbal attacks on Busia Governor Paul Otuoma during the Orange Party's members recruitment exercise. The head of state nabbing some Azimio stalwarts.
Your Excellency, hawa watu ni watu wako sasa, sio kama wakati ile ingine. Hata siku hizi wanasiasa wakikuja hapa, hakuna mtu anakutusi hata kutaja jina yako. Because we have told our people lazima waingie mahali wafanya nini huko. Kwa hivyo your foot soldier hapa.
Huyu governor wenyu ni governor kama magavana wengine wote. Kama rais anaanguka na ndege kwa boma ya Orengo na hakuna mtu anazomea Orengo, kwa nini Otuoma azomewe na mtu yeyote? Si huyu ni governor apewe heshima?
Mimi kama mama nalilia mambo ya wamama kudhulumiwa. Sana sana watoto wasichana. Tuna huzuni, watoto wetu wanauliwa kule kwa majumba zinaitwa sijui what A and B, whatever they are. Morality hatuwezi legislate, but mambo ya hizo mushrooming hospitality industries tunaweza legislate na tuone Sheria imewekwa kali, watoto wetu wasichana wasiuliwe ovyo ovyo.
The president also commissioned and handed over to the county government of Busia the upgraded Malakisi water treatment plant in Teso North sub-county, which is projected to serve over 80,000 households, up from 17,000 in Kocholia, Amagoro and Malaba town. Alan Ochanda, KTN News.
Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has asked Mount Kenya leaders to unite, shun divisive politics, and promote greater participation of the youth in productive socio-economic activities. Speaking at Kiambu Golf Club on Saturday night during a Thanksgiving ceremony for golf champion Michael Karanga, Gachagua said there was a political scheme to divide the Mount Kenya region voting bloc. Grace Nyang has more.
Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua is preaching unity in the Mount Kenya region amid calls to have him replaced by Kiharu Member of Parliament Ndende Nyoro in the 2027 politics, urging leaders to focus on development and socio-economic growth of the people, alleging a political scheme to divide the region.
Hivi tunaendelea, watu hii wanaelewa ni nini? And nobody can divide this region. Nobody. And anybody who seeks to divide this region is an enemy of this community. Because our strength is in our unity and our relevance in the national political discourse is informed by our unity of purpose. My people of this region, let's stay united and focused. I mean, whoever has any scheme to divide this region should know that the people of this region are very intelligent people.
Gachagua, during the Thanksgiving ceremony, got the backing from a section of elected leaders who had accompanied him, declaring immense support for a strong community.
This region is united behind President William Ruto. Hatutaki mambo mingi.
Kenya tuko kitu moja. Msiseme ati sijui Murang'a ifanye nini, sijui wapi ifanye nini, ati sijui Murang'a round hii sijui nini. Sisi tunasema Murang'a, they had their presidential candidate in 2013. Peter Kenneth. Walimchagua. 2017, 2022, walikuwa na Mwangi wao wa Iria. Walimuunga mkono. Round hii, sisi tunakusupport na wewe, you are our de facto leader.
That we have gone a very thick route to be where we are. Let us stand united. Let us respect the leader that is at the topmost, and let us give him peace.
We have to rally behind one leader who is Rigathi Gachagua. The others who are trying to divide Mount Kenya, fellow Kikuyus, please, united, we win.
There has seemingly been a split in the mountain, with a section of Mount Kenya leaders urging President William Ruto to drop Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua in the 2027 general polls and instead pick Kiharu Member of Parliament Ndende Nyoro as his running mate, with allegations that the Kenya Kwanza administration stands a chance to be re-elected for a second and final term with the change. A section of MPs majority drawn from the Murang'a County now wants President Ruto to drop Gachagua in favor of youthful Nyoro for the number 2 position in the next general polls.
We do not want somebody who has been talking about the disrespect that the Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta had. Well, he is actually worse. He thinks that some of us are trash. So we are saying this is not the type of person that you can entrust to lead the nation.
Nyoro has not mentioned his stance on the same. Grace Ganga, KTN News, Nairobi.
Now, the recent spat witnessed between President William Ruto and the Chief Justice Martha Koome over allegations of corruption in the corridors of justice may not have come as a surprise, since the two arms of government have been engaged in frosty relations, especially after the promulgation of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. While the judiciary has strived to keep the government from crossing the line, the executive has always complained of judiciary corruption and overreaching. KTN's Abdul has more.
They want to control the judiciary. They want to make the judiciary a puppet. Perhaps the peak of the war between the executive and the judiciary in the history of the country post the promulgation of the 2010 Constitution. The Chief Justice David Maraga then engaging in an all-out war with retired President Uhuru Kenyatta, whom he accused of a knack of disobeying court orders.
Some CSS and the PSS are bragging that the CJ will or should be removed before the end of this year.
Tuta-revisit hii mambo yenu. Ndipo tunauliza kila saa, kila pahali tukienda. Jaji amesema, tunafanya kazi hii, unakuja una block.
The war dragged through the end of their respective tenures that ended in 2022.
I have decided that unless I'm treated with the dignity due to my office, I will choose which of those state functions I will attend.
Tumpongeze. Fast forward to 2024, and it seems it is the same script, different cast.
Nani ajui hapa kuna ufisadi inaendelea mahakamani?
These threats and declarations are extremely serious and a monumental assault to the Constitution. It is also an assault to the rule of law.
To the executive, the biggest threat has always been known to be the judiciary, and that's why different administrations, and if it is possible, they have always tried to rein in and take control of the operations of the judiciary.
Let the president leave the judiciary alone. Let him not be seen as being actively interfering in the affairs of the judiciary at all.
And although the differences between the first CJ after the 2010 Constitution, Dr. Willie Mutunga, did not play out in the open with Presidents Mwai Kibaki and Uhuru Kenyatta, pundits argue he drew the line in the sand on the separation of powers.
The officers, including the leadership, the judges, and other judicial officials, have taken advantage of these facilities that Kenyans availed since 2010 to be more brave, to be more courageous, to be more professional, and to stand and look the executive and other institutions that have crossed the wrong path with the Constitution in the face.
Members of the executives do not talk against the judges. Judges are respected individuals. In fact, there used to be a saying that judges are officers who have been sent by God to govern.
And although the current CJ Martha Koome seems to have adopted a more diplomatic approach to addressing challenges within the judiciary, more collisions between the two arms are expected in coming days, as she could end up being the longest serving CJ yet post the 2010 Constitution. Emmanuel To, KT News, Nairobi.
Well, let's turn the crack now to Bada's Academia, where the Early Childhood Development Education, ECDE, teachers have slammed the proposal of the Council of Governors that ECDE teachers remain under the county government. Led by their chairman, Lawrence Otunga, the party has given an assurance that they support the report of a task force and that primary and secondary schools should be managed by the national government. Speaking in Nairobi, the ECDE teachers have said that despite graduating and even getting a TSC number, they still do not get a chance to be hired or promoted.
Kama wawakilishi wa walimu wa chekechea, tunasema ya kwamba tunaunga mkono ripoti ya kamati inayoshughulikia mambo ya masomo humu nchini. Tunataka mshahara ambao ni moja, mshahara ambaye ni uniform. Tungependa mwalimu wa chekechea akiajiriwa kuwe na promotion, kuwe na allowances, na hata akistahafu apate retirement benefits.
Ombi letu hasa kwa magovernors ni kuwa wacha tufuate katiba. Hatusemi ati walimu wa chekechea wakiingia kwa TSC ati kuna vita. Ni vile tu tunataka kuboresha elimu kutoka pale chini chekechea mpaka chuo kikuu. Ndiposa tunaambia magavana siku ya leo, wacha tume ya TSC, kwa sababu kikatiba imepewa nguvu ya kuajiri, kuwapa mwalimu namba, transfer, hiyo yote tuifuatilie.
Ninachoomba gavana wetu tafadhali atushughulikie what we want. We are demanding for our rights.
All right, we want to take a short break right now, and when we get back, we shall be looking at some of the stories that we've run you by, and also looking at this editorial cartoons we take a short break with, where it's all about also the Mount Kenya politics. Ndindi, are you the one making the mountain slippery for me? This is what he's asking, and you can see him there. He's got himself tied up to a ball, they call it ball and chain there, and the crown on Mount Kenya is there, right? There's snow-capped Mount Kenya. It's all about Mount Kenya politics. There has been also the questions regarding G2G oil experiment. And we've had our panelists here, most of them, led by also Senator Danson Mungatala, telling us that the deal was good for this country. But now the Ministry of Treasury comes to the fore and saying it is a flop. It has not worked for the country. And you can see inside there some of the presidential advisors, economic advisors in the laboratory, making all manner of mixings, and the dice has thrown every which way. You can see some of the concoction that actually blew up, and this is the G2G oil experiment that blew up. We shall be looking at that as well. What really went all right?